and it's about voices.
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to try.
That's what interested me about your topic for this morning.
Oh, good, right, okay.
I must be there.
Do you recognise her?
Joan Bakewell.
Joan Bakewell, indeed.
Yeah.
Is it? Wow.
She's, I think she's 89 now.
Really?
I think this was taken a few years ago. It wasn't that long ago, though. And the few interesting things about her. First of all, she came from Heaton Moor.
Really?
I didn't know that. That's well. And she was appointed as voice of older people by Harriet Harman in 2008.
2008.
And also, I remember when she was on, I don't know whether it was on Desert Island Disc, she mentioned that when she was young, she had voice training to get rid of her accent, which has always really irritated me.
That's speech training, not voice training.
Sorry, speech training. Okay, interesting distinction there. Perhaps you'll come back on to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, bit old, Bernard, bit old. Yeah.
Anyway, but she stood down after a couple of years as the government's pensioners czar in order to lobby for a more powerful role. I don't know whether she ever got it. She was also dubbed by Frank Muir as, what was the phrase he used to describe her?
Thinking man's crumpet.
Correct. Yeah. So in a way, I mean, hers is an example of somebody who, what's the right word, had speech training to get rid of her accent, and she was always very pleased that she had done that. And I thought that was not something she should be proud about personally, but there you go. Now, a couple of things. I think a lot of this is going to be about women's voices. And apparently women's voices have deepened over the last 40 years. And they're more similar to men's voices in the more egalitarian countries. So I'm not exactly sure which ones those are. This is just something I picked up on online. And also, and this is something I have been aware of, why do so many people, when they first hear themselves on a tape recorder or something like that, horrified by the voice that is played back to us? And I remember this in particular because my cousin Roger, who was brought up, our family all came from Hayward near Rochdale, of Gordon's fame, and they had very good, nice, I thought, strong Lancashire accents. We were brought up in Manchester, so we didn't really get that kind of accent. But Roger, when he first heard himself as a teenager on a tape recorder, was so horrified that he determined to change his voice. So what he did, and my brother and I, even now that we're in our 70s and 80s, whenever we meet together, we started doing this. We never did it to his face, and he lost this after a while, but it was really interesting while it lasted. He decided to start talking posh. So we used to do imitations of how he actually sounded, because it was something like, "Oh, Roger, tell us about the different kinds of oranges." "Oh, well, yes, Father, yes, indeed. There are two types of oranges. There are the very, very, very sweet oranges, and then there are the sour, terribly sour Seville oranges." So we just keel over from each other, imitating the voice and doing descriptions over it. So I was very much aware of that. Does anybody else have that feeling when they first heard themselves on a tape recorder?
Oh, for sure.
Yes, yes.
Every time.
Apparently,
yeah, it's also to do with because we hear the reverberation in our heads and through the bones.
Through the bones,
it's not
yeah.
just through the air. And yet, when you hear yourself back on a recording, the upper frequencies are amplified, not the lower frequencies.
Oh,
Agree. Well, I think I'm being quite resonant, and then when I hear it, it's all very high pitched.
Yeah, yeah.
And whiny.
Yeah, that's right. It sounds less high pitched to ourselves than it does to other people. So
that's right.
So Anne Karpf, who's a sociologist, has written a book called The Human Voice, believes our voices embarrass us because we hear in them things we hope to have edited out, like a Freudian slip. They tell people things about us we would rather they didn't know. We feel betrayed by them, she says. I don't know. I think that's a bit overthinking it myself, really. But what we're all familiar with doing is code switching. We've all got different voices. I became aware of this when I was, I must have been about 10 or 11, and I was sitting at the top of my stairs, and my father had gone down to answer the phone, and then the phone was always in the hallway. I don't know whether that was normal. You know, you just had one phone in the house, and he came from Hayward. He had a slight Hayward accent, not much, but when he answered the phone, it was hello, Longford, no, Chorlton 1943. And it was kind of like a posh voice, and I couldn't understand why all of a sudden he started changing his voice on the phone. Don't know if anybody else is familiar with that kind of thing.
I think a lot of people do that.
My dad did
That was my mum through and through. It was, hello, oh, it's you. How are you then? You know, real northern accent. Sorry, Nell, I cut across you.
No.
Did your dad talk like that as well on the phone? No,
We never had a phone, Bernard.
you just two tin cans with a string in between. Yeah, you were lucky. Yeah. Well, yes, a lot of people didn't have phones then as well, didn't it? We also had a party line, which seemed to disappear after a while. You'd pick up the phone and somebody else was having a phone call. People on the same line across the road. Bizarre. There you go. Anyway, that's that. But we've also got a variety of voices. We have one at work, perhaps, with our parents, our partner, our children. A friend of mine, whenever he talks to children, and I suppose everybody does this to some extent, but he seems to be extreme. He talks in a very, very childlike voice with them. And I don't know why, but I find it irritating. I think you should just talk to kids normally, you know, with sensitivity and pleasantness, obviously, but not putting on voices for it. So I think it is something that does happen quite a lot. Right. Okay.
I think it's demeaning, and kids see right through it.
Yes, I think they do, don't they? Now, women's voices, they've always been contentious. They were once banned from speaking in church because their voices were thought to cause impure thoughts in a man.
Probably.
But why was that thought to be the woman's fault rather than the man's fault?
Well, why do people wear face coverings in certain countries as well?
Well, exactly.
It's the male problem, not the female problem. No.
Yeah.
But it's also, I looked into this a bit, and in fact, it does come from Paul to the Corinthians, 14:34-35 for those for the reference. And the text reads, "The women are to keep silent in the churches, for they are not permitted to speak, but are to subject themselves just as the law also says. If they desire to learn anything, let them ask their own husbands at home, for it is improper for a woman to speak in church." And
Well, we all know about St. Paul, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. Not the most highly thought of, gentlemen.
No.
It was brought up again when in the Church of England, women were made, I think in 2015, and people were bringing it up then. And, somebody even in the commentary about it noted that a young vicar had come to their church and sought to impose it on the basis that that's what it said in St. Paul to the Corinthians. This was fairly recently, so a bit weird, really. So they were also thought to be too emotional for news reading as well. But now this is the one, I don't know whether you've heard of this one. And this is about baby voice, or as it was coined in 2020, sexy baby voice. And this has got quite a bit of a history, and I'll just go into this. It's a fairly short talk, this, but it's one I'm interested in having a look at. And this is Jessica in Love is Blind. Is anybody familiar with that quiz show? No?
No.
In this topic, Whoopi Goldberg will explain what the topic is about, and also the clip of Jessica from Love is Blind in 2020.
On the new Netflix reality show, Love is Blind, couples meet, get to know each other, and get engaged before they see each other for the first time. Right before the honeymoon, one contestant used sexy baby talk during the dating period and didn't drop the act. Creepy. Watch the clip.
No one knows I'm in Mexico. It's crazy and it's tripping me out.
I love hearing the waves crash on the beach. That's my favorite thing in the whole world.
Oh, sure.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it, love it.
Shirtless. Yeah, I might go shirtless.
You're going shirtless?
Yep, going shirtless.
Remember Jackie Kennedy? She used to talk like this, like a little baby. And then Marilyn Monroe did also.
Yeah.
But Happy
she
birthday,
keep that
Mr.
up?
President. He must have liked it.
Well, I don't know whether anybody ever listens to Malcom Gladwell. He's quite a famous podcaster. He does a podcast called Revisionist History. And on this one, he talks to Lake Bell, who's done a story on called Inside Voice. And this is her talking to Malcolm. It's only a very short clip, but the reason for Betty Boop on the right will become apparent.
Number one, the vocal fry.
I would say number one, pitch.
Pitch, okay.
I would go straight to pitch. So if I can just get the pitch, it's, so we're here and I'm already starting to fry a little bit, but I'm trying not to so that I can just take pitch. This is pitch. So this is like, if I were to be talking to you in an intellectual way, but I'm just pitched up, I would never go this high for anything. First of all, it's athletic. That's one of the things about Sexy Baby is that it's like hard to do. Like you have to work hard at it. It is an athletic feat.
Okay. Layer in the next thing.
The next thing would be fry.
Uh-huh.
When you have this and then you start adding in the fry. So give me like why?
Like why?
Close.
Like we're always in the upper register. So pitch is a constant, but we're not frying everything.
Fry is like seasoning. You can't fry all the way through or else you would just have a croak sound.
Yeah.
So fry is really kind of like, there's a dance there. So for instance, in my normal speech, I would say, for instance, and that's a plateau. We're just like on a road going forward. For instance, is obviously a classic up talk with a little sprinkle of fry and pitch up.
What work is Fry doing? Is it comic? Is it for emphasis?
I think it comes from a place of like sex. This is part of the like sexy flavor of Spice. Because I think when I've interviewed people, hey, what's the most alluring, sexy voice in a woman? It tends to be croakier voices. It tends to be smokier voices. And whether they're high voices or low voices, they all seem to have that element in them. Betty Boop is kind of the original Sexy Baby, though, just as a concept.
That's where the archetype comes from.
Yeah.
Boopy doopy doopy doop, boop boopy doop.
So you've got the idea, I think, from that about pitch and fry. I'd not heard of the word fry before, but it's obviously has been used. It seems to have been what's called a Gen Z innovation, that kind of talk. It started off with I don't know if anybody was aware of it, was the Valley Girls talk in Los Angeles, which was very much like that. But it's also got a history. This is a very famous of Marilyn Monroe. It's the only photo of her actually with John Kennedy, who was the then president, as you're all aware. And she's in this remarkable dress.
Which a dress?
Yeah, it's made out of 2,500 rhinestones. She had to be sewn into it.
Must have been very uncomfortable.
Why?
Well, wait a minute. Let it all unveil. it was found afterwards that it had damaged it. It could not be worn without damaging it. They were actually, the guy designed it says, no, use a fake one of them, not the original. It's just won't stand it, but it did. It also was worn. Who wore it most recently? Does anybody remember this from this year? You're not reading your Hello magazine.
No, Bernard, I'm not.
Kim Kardashian. Don't you remember that? I'm sure you've all heard of Kim Kardashian, surely. If you live in a very sheltered life.
I heard the name. I don't know what she does or why she's well known.
She wore it for the Met Gala in 2022. But anyway, it was John Kennedy's 45th birthday celebration in New York in the Madison Square Gardens. And eventually, Marilyn Monroe shimmered onto the stage. There was a running joke by the guy who had introduced her, Peter Lawford, that he was continually throughout the show, which included opera singers and all sorts of things, saying Marilyn Monroe will soon be coming on, and she never did. She was notoriously for turning up late. So you'll see when he actually introduces her, he calls her the late Marilyn Monroe, which isn't to say he assumed she was going to die soon, which she did a couple of months later through an overdose, but because she was arriving late. But anyway, towards the end of it, she came on and revealed a gown. It was almost like, gave the impression that she was naked and illuminated. It was a Jean-Louis flesh-colored gown embedded with more than 2,500 rhinestones and tailored to hug her curves. Dorothy Kilgallen described it as making love to the president in the direct view of 40 million Americans, because they did have an affair, which didn't last very long, and in fact, she never saw him after this appearance. But let's just.
Mr. President, the late Marilyn Monroe.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Mr. President. Happy birthday to you.
I can now retire from politics after having had happy birthday sung to me in such a sweet, wholesome way.
So what did you think of that?
Well, to be fair, she always sang like that.
Yes, she did, didn't she? Yeah, I'm not saying there was anything wrong with it. It's one of the most famous moments in pop culture, I think. And
I just think it's a pity that a woman who was intelligent and good looking should let herself be used like that, really. I think it's just appalling, really. Turns my stomach.
Yeah,
I entirely agree with that. And there, her former husband, the writer, what was his name?
Henry Miller.
Henry, yeah. He said that she was just so controlled by male domination that she would feel that if she didn't do what the men asked her to do, her career would be ended. And but that's utter coercion, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
remember one description a friend of hers had, and they go out, to the shops or something like this, and she said she could go incognito, but she could put on Marilyn Monroe. And she said, well, do it. And as she did it, she became Marilyn Monroe, and everybody immediately recognized her. She knew what she was doing to a certain extent. And I don't think there's a more famous star than Marilyn Monroe still. I think she's incredibly famous because of what she achieved, as well as being manipulated by others. She was still I think, an amazing person.
But isn't there also a sense of belonging, a sense of fitting in, that the color of the voice alters? I mean, if you heard me with my brothers, we were all brought up in Essex, in East London, And when I see them, how you doing, mate? You all right? Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, great. Yeah. And there is a chameleon-like change from one aspect to another. And certainly as I speak, I'm not trying to big myself up either, but with working in different countries with different languages, and especially in France, I've been told, look, your accent is too good. We prefer it if you sound English, because they love that sense of the unexpected or the differences between one culture and another.
I'm very guilty of mirroring whoever I'm with. I take on their mode of speaking. In fact, Woody Allen made a film about intense mirroring called Zelig, where he was able to transform himself into famous people. Sorry, Doreen, you were about to say.
No, we just thought we got there together, didn't we? My memory of a thing that happened about voice was I was an evacuee during the war, and I was evacuated to Nelson near Combe, and my mum was only allowed to come and see us every 8 weeks or so, and she said to me, "Why are you talking funny like that?" I said, "I'm not talking funny." She said, "You are. You're talking funny." And I must have picked up their dialect. I don't know. I didn't know I was talking funny, but she picked it up. I only said 3 sentences and she asked me why I was talking funny. And I believe I came home with it as well. And I had to learn to speak Manchester again. At the other extreme, when I listen to myself speaking now or hearing something, I am speaking a heck of a lot slower than I used to do. And I wonder if it's anything to do with thinking slower. Yeah, honestly, because I used to be very chatty. And now I'm saying, now then, listen to this. And it doesn't sound like me till I hear it recorded.
I think you're right. I mean, when the other day, the granddaughters came through the door and immediately started talking so fast that they didn't have time to get a breath. And there were no, it was just one long stream of, and you could say, slow down. But I think there is a kind of an energy there that's just got to come out with the young kids.
Yeah, they call that doorstep chatter, don't they? When you come home from school and they just want to spill everything they want to share with you, and it comes out like that, little ones.
I haven't heard it called doorstep chatter. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Actually, one thing that I don't like is when you're at the end of like a meal and people are going, and then they stand on the doorstep chatting for about 10 minutes. When people are going, I just want them to go.
But that's that process of communication as well, in terms of, especially for us thespians of one kind or another. How many times have you been with a director who has said, "Look, that's great, but just slow up. Just let the intensity of the line make itself felt." I had the misery of editing a Zoom session yesterday with the project I'm working on, and it was mostly myself speaking, and I couldn't believe the amount of stuttering and uttering that, like an old jalopy that didn't quite fire up properly. And that sense of Doreen, I think you're right in terms of the speed of thought and the speed of delivery and being able to focus on what it is we want to say. But that lady that was talking about the pitch level, if we start going up a bit more or start going down. Oh, and the word fry, saxophonists from the 1930s and 40s, to get that growl in the sound. And Coltrane used to talk about frying the note. Yeah, man, you know, you gotta really fry that note. You know, the rumble, where the
You should talk
vocal
about that all the time, Bill. That's terrific.
And I've sort of spent a lot of time listening to clients, and generally, I don't think people listen terribly well, or even take the time to listen. Most of the time, they're allowing somebody to speak in order to wait for them to finish so that they can say something. So they're not really listening. And that's what I meant the other day about I like silence, because you can hear a lot more in silence. And I don't think people get enough of it.
What do men do to attract women?
Strut.
Strut.
They walk.
Yeah, but another subject, Bernard, will be linking body language with speech.
I'm thinking like
We
that, yeah.
cannot get away from that. How children learn, and as Estelle said, the kids know they can hear through everything. They can hear through all the, with the years I've worked with kids, they know, and they can log it. They're very, very sensitive.
Anyway, we're off in a second, so nice to see everybody today.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Thanks, Bernard.
Have a good day, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.
Right. See ya.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.